I travel a lot for work, usually small towns, quiet places off the highway where the GPS signal fades in and out. Last October, I was driving through northern Pennsylvania after visiting a client. The rain got bad around 11 p.m., so I decided to pull over for the night. That's when I saw the sign. The Ashworth Grand Hotel vacancy. An old neon board glowing faint red through the rain. It looked old-fashioned, like something out of the 1960s, but the lights were on and I was too tired to care. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of lemon polish and dust. Everything looked frozen in time. Floral wallpaper, brass desk bell, a rack of old room keys instead of key cards. Behind the desk stood a smiling woman in an old blue uniform. Her name tag said Marjorie. "Checking in?" she asked, voice soft but flat. "Yeah," I said, shaking water off my jacket. "Just one night." She slid an actual paper ledger toward me. "Please sign here." The page looked strange, filled with neat cursive names dated decades back. Still, I scribbled my signature and handed it back. She gave me a key, real brass heavy, and said, "Room 217, elevators to your right. Breakfast starts at 6. As I turned to go, she added softly, "It's been a while since we've had you here." I froze. "What do you mean?" She just smiled. "Enjoy your stay." Room 217 looked perfectly ordinary. Lace curtains, dusty TV, floral carpet. I showered, checked a few emails, and passed out around midnight. At 2:17 a.m., I woke to faint music, muffled jazz playing somewhere below me. It sounded old, grainy, like it came from a record player. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, leather soles on carpet. I opened the door. The hallway was empty, but the music grew louder, drifting from downstairs. Curiosity won over common sense. I followed the sound of the lobby. No one was there. The front desk was empty, and behind it sat a radio, dusty, unplugged, quietly playing that same old jazz tune. As I stepped closer, the song cut off mid-note. The air went dead still. Then, faintly from behind me, "You're late for checkout." I turned. No one was there. Just the empty lobby, silent and cold. The next morning, sunlight poured through my curtains. For a moment, everything felt normal. But when I looked in the bathroom mirror, something made my stomach drop. The mirror was slightly fogged from my shower, and across the glass, written in condensation, were the words, "Welcome back, room 217. I wiped it clean, thinking maybe it had been written from a night before, but the handwriting didn't look like mine. At the front desk, I asked Marjorie if anyone else had been assigned my room before me. She stared at me a moment too long before answering. "We don't get many guests anymore," she said softly. "Not since the fire." "Fire?" I asked. She smiled politely. "Enjoy your breakfast." In the dining area, I was the only person there. On the wall hung black and white photos of the hotel in its prime. Grand staircase, ballroom, staff smiling in crisp uniforms. Then one picture made me stop cold. It was a photo of the front desk, dated October 17th, 1973. Behind the counter stood Marjorie, looking exactly the same as she did now. Same face, same smile, and in front of the counter, signing a ledger, was a man who looked exactly like me. Same face, same clothes, same room key in hand. 217. Heart pounding, I ran back upstairs. The room door was open. Inside, everything was dark except for the old TV, now flickering with static. Through the noise, a voice began to whisper, "You never left. You never left. You never left." I yanked the TV plug, but the screen stayed on, now showing a hotel lobby from above in grainy black and white. In the image, I could see myself standing exactly where I was right now. Then, behind me, a second figure appeared on screen. A man in a suit, face half burned, smoke curling from his hair. I turned around. Nothing. but the smell of burnt would fill the room. I sprinted downstairs, shouting for Marjorie. No answer. The lobby looked different now. Darker, decayed. The wallpaper peeled in strips. The chandelier hung half-broken, dust thick in the air. The neon sign outside no longer glowed red. It hung shattered over the entrance. On the floor lay the same guest ledger I'd signed the night before. I flipped through the pages until I found my name. Next to it, written in neat black ink, was a date, October 17th, 1973. And beside that, one word, deceased. I don't remember leaving the hotel. Maybe I didn't. All I know is sometimes when I pass through small towns and see old motels on the side of the road, I feel a pull, like something wants me to stop. Last month, I searched online for the Ashworth Grand Hotel. It burned down in 1973. 22 guests died, all trapped inside during a midnight fire. The news article listed their names. Number 17, Michael Daniels, age 32, room 217. That's my name, and that was my room. They say the Ashworth Grand still appears on stormy nights. Lights glowing, bell ringing, vacancy sign flickering red. And if you pull in, they'll welcome you kindly. You'll sign the ledger. You'll take your key. And in the morning, they'll tell you the same thing they told me. You checked in last night, but you never checked out. We don't really think about what's on the other side of our walls. You hear someone coughing next door, or a TV, or the clatter of dishes, and you tell yourself it's normal. You never imagine that the sounds could mean something else, something darker, something watching you. This story is about a woman who lived alone, and about the man who lived just one wall away. Her name was Evelyn Cross, 33 years old. She lived in a narrow, two-story row house on the edge of Dunvale, a quiet, middle-class neighborhood. She'd moved there after a bad breakup. A place to start fresh, be a lone heel. The houses were old, built in the 1940s, and the walls were thin, paper thin. You could hear your neighbor sneeze, laugh, even drop a fork. At first, that was the worst of it, until she met the man next door. His name was Daniel Reeves. He was in his late 40s, lived alone, and rarely went outside during the day. Sometimes, Evelyn would catch a glimpse of him through her kitchen window, tall, pale, wearing a dirty work jacket, staring blankly into his backyard. When she waved once, he didn't wave back. He just stood there, tilted his head slightly, and went back inside. She brushed it off. Some people were just odd. Then came the noises. Every night around 1 a.m., she'd hear strange sounds from the side of the house, dragging like furniture being moved, heavy footsteps pacing in circles, sometimes even faint murmuring. Once, she swore she heard crying. It would stop the moment she got out of bed. The next day, when she saw him taking out his trash, she almost asked if he was okay, but something about his face stopped her. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. His eyes were sunken, his mouth twitching, and there was dried blood on his hand, like he'd scratched himself raw. When he noticed her looking, he smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was curious, like he wanted to see how scared she could get. Evelyn tried to ignore it. She turned her phone flashlight toward the wall whenever she heard a noise. She told herself she was imagining things. But then he started knocking. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. 3 slow knocks. Pause. Then 3 more. Sometimes she'd knock back, just once, to let him know she could hear. The knocking would stop for a while, but later that night, it would start again. Always the same pattern. 3. Pause. 3. It went on for weeks, until one night, she woke up to a sound that froze her blood, a whisper right behind the wall. She pressed her ear to it, and she heard her name, Evelyn. She stumbled back, heart pounding, staring at the wall like it was alive. And for the first time, she truly felt unsafe in her own home. The next morning, she told her co-worker, Denise, everything. The noises, the whisper, the man next door. Denise begged her to call the police, or at least a landlord. But Evelyn laughed it off. "He's just weird," she said. "I'll be fine." But that night, things got worse. At around 2:30 a.m., she woke up to violent banging on the shared wall, so hard that dust fell from the ceiling. "Stop it," she shouted. "Just stop." The noise stopped. Total silence. Then faintly, a man's voice, low and calm, from behind the wall. "I can't sleep when you move around like that." Evelyn froze. She hadn't made a sound. Her hands were shaking as she whispered, "What do you mean?" But there was no reply, just slow breathing, and then soft laughter. She barely slept. When daylight came, she packed a bag, ready to spend the night at Denise's. But she never made it there. She texted Denise that morning, "Gonna stop by after work." That was the last anyone ever heard from her. 3 days later, after she missed work and calls went unanswered, a welfare check was requested. 2 officers, Harris and Vega, arrived. Her car was still there. Her lights were off. Mail piling up by the door. They entered the house and immediately noticed the smell. Thick, rotten, like old meat and bleach. They searched the living room, kitchen, and upstairs. Everything looked normal except for the basement door. It was slightly open. The basement was dark, cold, and quiet, except for a faint electric hum coming from behind the far wall. They followed the noise until Officer Harris noticed something strange. A small hole, low to the ground, where a few bricks had been pried out. A light flickered from the other side. Then a shape moved past it. "Hello?" Harris called out. No answer. He crouched down, leaned closer, and what he saw, he would never forget. On the other side of the wall, in the neighbor's basement, was Daniel Reeves. He was kneeling in front of a workbench, his hands and arms covered in blood. On the table in front of him was a body, cut apart, wrapped in plastic. A woman's hand dangled off the side, painted nails, a silver ring. Harris recognized it instantly. From the missing person report photo, Evelyn Cross. Daniel didn't resist. He looked up at them, wide-eyed, and smiled. "She wanted to come through," he whispered. "She kept talking to me through the wall." They pulled him out, cuffed him, and stuffed him into the back of the police van. When they arrived at the station 20 minutes later, Daniel Reeves was dead. He'd used his belt to hang himself inside the van. No note, no struggle, but scratched into the metal panel beside him. Deep gouges made with his own fingernails were 3 words, "Still behind wall." The next morning, police sealed off both homes for investigation. But before leaving, one of the officers, Vega, took a last look around Evelyn's basement. And that's when he noticed something. The wall, the bricks Daniel had removed. There were more missing now, fresh ones, and from deep inside the cavity of the wall. Vega swore he heard something moving, slow, wet, dragging. He leaned in and heard breathing. They sealed the house that night. It's still empty, still boarded up. Neighbors say that in the summer, when windows are open and the air is still, you can sometimes hear knocking from underground. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more if you live in a row house. And you ever hear a knock from behind your wall, don't knock back, because sometimes they're not trying to scare you. They're trying to come through.
Thank you for watching. Kindly like, share, comment, and subscribe.